Welcome to Health Oddity, the show that strips away the jargon and hype surrounding all things health and fitness to help you live a long, strong and energetic life. Lining up at the bar this week, here's Peter Lant, Paul Bassett and James St. Pierre.
Welcome to Health Oddity Podcast, episode number 24. Welcome back. We've had a great start to 2021 in terms of the guests that we've had on. This week is yet another fantastic, interesting guest, and someone that a lot of you may have encountered before, and then some of you perhaps in the strength community who've never encountered. So this is going to be an opportunity for you to see the other side of the health equation, the endurance world, but also we're going to discuss a variety of things from nutrition, strength training, endurance, you name it. But we'll get on to that in a second. For the moment, I just want to welcome my guests today, my colleagues rather, my co-hosts. Peter Lant, how are you doing?
I'm doing all right. How are you?
I'm all right.
I was going to try and do all that in a rhythmical thing like Brad does on his podcast, but I don't think I'll be able to pull it off.
Don't rap.
No.
Brad can do it. Brad has a rhythm.
Peter's doing all right. He's staying up at night for the man on the West Coast. He got the most. It's a fantastic show. Hope you stick around. Yo.
Hey! You see, Brad, I'm from Newcastle, right? We are Geordies, and the last Geordies who did raps were called Ant and Dec. Don't look them up. It was dreadful. Anyway, back to you, Paul.
Okay, so James, you've got to follow that now.
I've got the excuse that the kids are in bed, so I've got to keep the noise to a minimum.
Right, okay, we'll take that, okay. So Brad's already kind of introduced himself. Brad Kearns is our guest today. Brad is not only a podcaster, he's an author, he is a athlete. I mean, the list goes on. I'm just going to reel off some things that Brad's done. I came across Brad a few years back because I love listening to podcasts myself, and there's so many great podcasts out there. And I came across Brad on the Primal Endurance podcast that he'd done with Mark Sisson. Some of you may know Mark Sisson, who runs his blog, Mark's Daily Apple. But Brad has a way with words. Brad has a way of making very complex ideas really palatable and really interesting, and a way of opening your mind to complex ideas, but also giving you advice without making you think that you've done everything wrong in your life, that actually there's opportunity out there and you could do things a little bit better. So for me, it was always a pleasure listening to his podcast. Welcome, Brad. I'm going to do a little introduction, but say hey.
Thanks, Paul.
Yeah, so Brad comes from a background of endurance. So those of you who listen to this podcast who perhaps know us because you're in the strength community, then you'll maybe not be familiar with much of the endurance world, but we also have listeners from all backgrounds. Our clients are from the ages of 35 to 65, the general population who just wants to get healthy. And Brad's podcast, B.Rad, and also the stuff he's done in the past called the Primal Endurance Podcast, address health in such an interesting way and from a different perspective that you may have heard. So Brad's background, where do I start? I mean, Brad is an author. He's written books, best-selling books. Brad previously was a triathlete, a world-renowned triathlete. Was it top 3, if I've got it, top 20 ranked professional speed golfer, top 3 world-ranked masters, 55 to 59 high jumper. You broke the Guinness World Record for the fastest single hole of golf ever played. Speed golf, we've got to get onto that at some point. And where have we got the your triathlon work? You'll have to tell us about that because I can't find it on here. But Brad was a world-renowned triathlete, posting some crazy times, and now he works to educate the general health seeker on endurance, well-being, nutrition, and has some really interesting ideas. So welcome, Brad.
Well said. Thanks for the intro, Paul. Yes, yeah. I was an old-time triathlete. I was not as fast as the Brownlees are today. And I marvel at how the sport has progressed from the early days, because I was really involved in the very, very early beginning of professionalism in triathlon. We weren't in the Olympics yet. We eventually got there in the year 2000, long after I retired from the sport. So I raced in the 80s and 90s. And boy, it was about going out there and doing these 3 grueling endurance sports, swimming, biking, and running, and just putting as many hours of training in as you could squeeze in during the day and wake up and try to do it the next day. So it was very rudimentary. And of course, things have progressed in all manner of sport to present day, where these guys are, just exceptional world level performers in the case of the Brownlees in individual sports that they're competing in and putting together as triathletes. So that was a long time ago and a whole different, phase of my life. And since I retired when I was age 30, I was done with professional racing. I raced from 20 to 30, and I was completely worn out and wiped out from all the traveling and the extreme training. And so then I had to open my eyes to, okay, what's the rest of my life going to look like? And how am I going to maintain fitness? But not only maintain fitness, and you were reading those crazy things off the bio, the Guinness World Record for speed golf. Who's heard of that? Or the high jumping that I do in the old guys 55 to 59 division. But I feel it's really, really important to move through life and always maintain that passion and that competitive intensity. So I'm no longer a professional athlete who wakes up and lives and breathes my sport and has the pressure of, making my income from what position I finish in the race, and all that kind of stuff is a phase that's gone now. But I still have that edge where I'm really serious about my goals, even though they're silly and might not matter, and they might not be on ESPN, and I might not be getting large size checks at the award ceremony if I happen to do well, but they mean just as much to me when I sneak into an empty high school stadium and go and practice my high jumping and put the bar up and clear the bar, and I scream in the pit even when there's no one around. It feels the same to me as winning a race on the pro circuit with the crowds and the cameras. And so I really like to promote that message. I know a lot of your listeners are in those age groups where they're done with their schoolboy athletic experiences, or that extreme level when they really reach the highest point. And then you see a lot of people that are sitting around and watching television and talking about how fast or how strong they were back in the day. So I'm putting the challenge out to everyone that find something that lights you up, that really makes you happy and is a really compelling goal. It doesn't mean you have to spend 6 hours per day training for it like I did back when, but it's just doing the approach that gives you excitement, and then something to keep you focused and keep doing my drills and my injury preventions and my mobility exercises and all that kind of stuff that maybe we'll talk about a little bit. But I want to be known as that lifelong athlete, and whatever I'm doing, that's what's important to me.
Fantastic.
One of the things that I was just going to say, Paul McElroy, who we had on last week, one of the things he said, if you want to get good at something and if you really want to improve, then compete in it, and that element of lifelong competition, and no matter what level you're competing at or who you're competing against, that element of actually having to step up and take part in some form of competition really focuses the mind, doesn't it? It focuses the training and just focuses the whole approach to life, I think.
Yeah, well said. And I think we can so easily sink into an extremely comfortable life for the first time in the history of humanity. Right now we're struggling. We have the global epidemic and all those things. There's always something to complain about. But in a general sense, most people listening, you can make it through life pretty easily, not having to lift anything heavy, maybe getting a secure income, and so that your future is assured, where you just show up and log into your computer, make your contribution to the economy, and go home and watch the television. So I think we do have to get awakened to the challenges of what makes us human. That's why I like this cold plunge that I've promoted. And you can look at me on YouTube, Brad Kearns chest freezer cold plunge. What's that guy doing? He's jumping into a chest freezer filled with water that's 36 degrees. And I do that as part of my morning regimen. And it feels cold. I'm not saying it's wonderful. The spa tub that I have nearby that's 104 feels wonderful every time I go in. But the reason I do this is because I want to build that focus and that resiliency against all forms of stress. And the cold water is representative of, if I can do that and I can discipline my body to get in that tub and go through my 20 breath cycles, which takes about 5 minutes, and I get out. If I can say that I do that and tell all your listeners, it means something to me that I'm a focused, disciplined guy. Not that I don't like to relax and goof off and whatever, but we got to have something in our life that's helping us keep that edge, and that has a lot of implications for hormone balance as well.
So,
Absolutely. I mean, you live in Los Angeles, right? So you need to get
Lake Tahoe, I live in now.
Oh, Lake Tahoe. Sorry, I thought
Yeah.
you lived. Oh, you're from Los Angeles, right? Is that
Yeah,
right?
originally, yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, it's warm over there, isn't it?
Lake Tahoe's a mountain resort, so it's a skiing area.
Right,
and it's very cold. Los Angeles is nice and warm. So
sorry,
yeah.
I thought you were in LA because I was like, yeah, you're going to need to do a cold plunge there. Here, we don't really have that problem in the winter. We're all right with that.
Yeah, thanks for that point, because it's Mark Sisson and I were writing about this, and we're thinking, wait a second, Mark's in Miami now, and I'm in, I was in Sacramento, which is a temperate climate. And if you're heading out into a cold day, installing snow chains for the motorists or working in an unheated warehouse, the cold therapy is going to take a different look. But you're right, for most people, it's a nice way to start the day, and then you can rewarm naturally, let's say in your home, sometimes I have to wear a sweatshirt and a hoodie because I'm getting a little, it's called after drop, where your body temperature is low and you start to shiver a little bit. But it's a great therapy for most everyone who's heading into a warm environment for the rest of the day. And that's one of the things that we've missed in modern life, is this adaptability to temperature extremes, because wherever we are on the globe, most of our time is in a comfortable setting. Even if we're in above the Arctic Circle in northern Sweden, they still got the fire going and it's 71 inside the home. Same with the UK, doesn't have the greatest winter weather, but I don't see a lot of people out there in shorts and a t-shirt spending hours outdoors. So it's nice to bring in these, they're called hormetic stressors, these brief, positive, natural stressors. And a strength training session is the same. It's the same category. Same with fasting, sprinting, lifting some heavy stuff, jumping in the cold tub. These are all things that hone our resiliency to stress.
I remember.
I was about to say, James, that hot tub you have out the back. We like to do some of the things we discuss on the podcast. So I nominate you to use that in the winter without warming it up.
Well, a few years ago, I've heard you, Brad, talk about Wim Hof and things in the past. And a few years ago, I started doing the cold showers, and just started doing the cold at the end of the shower, and then the whole cold showers. And I really got into it. And then one time I was over in the French Alps skiing obviously in the winter, and I turned my shower there fully round to cold. And it was a different degree of cold than I have in my shower at home. It was ice. It was unbearable almost. It was so much colder than the coldest I can get the water here. So it's good.
Yeah, I think you got to do it in increments. But one of the things, I mean, about the endurance world particularly, is that and particularly triathlons, Ironman, stuff like that, they take a certain mindset. And often that mindset is quite a determined one. Sometimes you get very A-type characters. When you look at it on paper, an Ironman, for example, is a ridiculously long distance. A lot of strength athletes, they think in sets of 5 and sets of 3. We're thinking of hours upon hours on your feet on a bike, swimming through water, swimming through the sea. And that's quite an extreme thing. And often people see that the solution to get to that point in which they can complete it needs to be equally as extreme. And it's not to say that it shouldn't be hard, but I hear you talk about a different side to that and a more sustainable one, because you really built the plane while you were flying it back in the days when you were at your elite level, because it was still a young sport. So what's changed in triathlon? Do you think it's changed? And how has it shaped your current thinking about how someone who's in their 40s, for example, should train?
Good question. I think, unfortunately, not enough has changed for my liking. And even at the highest level of professional sport, I know the big sports are soccer and track and field in Europe, and in America we have the basketball and the football and the baseball leagues. And you see these players, getting routinely injured and cast aside, and their careers are shorter than they should be. The great basketball player Klay Thompson had a horrible injury. He missed a season, and then he was getting ready for the next season, and he tore his Achilles for another missing season. And so I contend that something is still disastrously flawed with even the way we train the highest level elite athletes in sport. I know there's going to be a risk when you're trying to break world records that you might pull a hamstring at one point if you're training that hard. But I think there's a tendency, just like you described that personality. You were very polite when you described that highly motivated type that's attracted to these crazy sports. But yeah, if we step into the question, knowing that we're dealing with a certain population that's really willing to do whatever it takes to succeed and is driven and focused and is not needing motivation to get off the couch, it's more likely that they need motivation to adhere to a recommended strategy that includes backing off and taking it easy and not going out there and blasting oneself every time we go out the door. And I think we can all nod our heads and say, yeah, that sounds sensible, what Brad's saying or what this says in the book here. But I think we really have to come to terms with the purpose that we're intending when we go and do a workout. And for example, if you're needing to blow off steam from your stressful pent up lifestyle with all kinds of, job stresses, and your boss is difficult or your family's on your case and you want to go out there and throw some weight around, that's perfectly acceptable. And it's a great expression of your humanity to go out there and push yourself and become uncomfortable. But then we have to weigh that with, let's say we've set some goals and we've written down on paper that we want to excel in a certain sport or in whatever, benchmarks we have. That requires a proper balance of stress and rest. And so I like just listening to the intuition, not so much listening to the body and going by instinct, because that's like animal instinct. The animal will run until they drop because they're chasing a rabbit, and that's their instinct. Humans have the ability to have a higher level of reasoning. So you might feel great every day for 6 days in a row because you're in a competitive setting and training with some really in an exciting environment with the loud music when you go in and do the biking class. But you have to say, look, I've also been working really hard and I have all these other stress factors in my life. And it's a sensible idea now to tone things down for a while, even as my legs feel okay, but I notice they're, getting a little bit achy or whatever, and sort of, preempt these problems where we dig a hole and it takes a long time to crawl out. And you can always look back and go, yeah, I got a bit of a cold there because I stayed up late at the party. I ate a lot of sugar and I did a huge workout the following day, and then didn't usually take my restful afternoon. I had to go and do something else. And then boom, you're down for 2 weeks of subpar immune function and bad energy and all these things. And so that part, you get a little tricky and nuanced because people want so badly to achieve something and write in their journal that they just rode their bicycle for 80 kilometers or ran for an hour and felt great and had a faster time over the course of the park loop than they did before. And so it's like sort of delaying this instant gratification to being more patient and having a bigger picture of what it means to be fit and healthy, and how those two don't necessarily go together and in fact can be in opposition unless you're smart about it.
Exactly. I've just had that exact example before we did this podcast. Actually, I had a guy online this evening, so we have to train online at the moment because all the gyms are shut. And he'd been at work all day, so he works in one of the big supermarkets. He's like a manager of one of the big supermarkets over here, and they've been really busy during the lockdown because they're one of the only shops that are open, so they're just super busy. So he's been really stressed, and then he drives home, and within 10 minutes of getting home, he's on the call with me to do a session. So the first thing I ask everyone before we even start is, how are you feeling? Are you feeling strong today? Are you feeling fit? Are you feeling mobile? Are you and we can test that out in the first couple of minutes. And he was like, I'm knackered. My back's sore. It was killing me in the car on the way home. I'm really tired. So I was like, right. I had an idea of what we were going to do, but I was like, we're not doing that. And we just did a load of mobility work, like your morning routine type stuff, just like a little bit of static stretching, a little bit of mobility, a little bit of movement. And then it was like at the end of that, how does your back feel at the end of that exercise? Much better. Right. Now try this. How does it feel doing that? Bit sore. Right. Let's do something else. Then go back to that. How does that feel now? Oh, it's better. And he said, and I try to instill this in all of the people who come to see me, is like, it doesn't matter what you feel like, come along anyway, because we'll be able to do something. Because if you don't come along, you're going to sit on the sofa, watch telly, probably get a rubbish night's sleep. And then, and then tomorrow's a write-off as well. So at least we can try and get something done, which is why I only watched it yesterday, actually, your morning routine video. And I thought that was brilliant. It was very quick because it was on speed. But no, I thought that was brilliant. And it's like, I mean, obviously yours is like 35 minutes long, I think you said. But, people don't have to do that. But I often try to get people to just do 5 minutes in the morning because you watch, I watch my dog in the morning. He gets up and he stretches out, downward dog, and then he does it this way. And then he's like, oh, and then he's like, right, I'm ready to go now. And humans don't do that. We'll get up, have a shower, get in the car, go to work. And
now they just get they get up, they have a shower, they get their bowl, and then they work and they eat and work. I mean, I've got clients, they wake up 10 minutes before they're sending emails. It's crazy, particularly this work-life balance we have now in the post-lockdown world.
Yeah, well, that's another type of mentality, isn't it, as well, of like, oh, I'm at home now, so I don't have the commute, so I can get up later. It's like, no, you can get up at the same time and do lots of other stuff first before work. And you'll reap the benefits.
So one of the things that I want to talk about is, and this kind of segues into something we were talking about right at the beginning. Often we have a disconnect between what was done, what an individual achieved, say in their 20s, maybe particularly in America, where it's very competitive high school and university sports leagues across all disciplines. Then there's 20 years of work where people sit at a desk, people, start to go into disrepair, they become more chair-shaped, and then all of a sudden at 40, look, I'm 40, sometimes I think that I pretty much, am I having a midlife crisis? Or is it about to happen? I don't know. I can't quite work out if I'm actually in the middle of one or it's about to start. But you suddenly go, right, I'm going to do something big. I'm going to run an Ironman. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do an ultra marathon. I'm going to deadlift 150 kilos, first time ever, whatever it is. And they forget that period in between. So when you talk to people, Brad, how are you kind of addressing that kind of that zone that they seem to forget about between I used to do this and now what can I do?
Yeah, I think a lot of people are in that all or nothing mentality, and there's probably a huge level of burnout from, once you finally move past your sporting glory times where it was such a all-consuming exercise. I don't really have any interest in doing triathlon related training anymore because I did it for 9 years straight every day, and so I'm on to things that interest me more. And I think there's some way to bridge that gap is to say, look, you don't have to be a all in member of the national team type of mode here. You can just get out and enjoy your neighborhood and do things that challenge your body and that aren't that strenuous. And, it was a good point, Peter. You got to get the person out and doing something. But I think we're even I'm guilty of saying, well, if I don't feel perfect, I'm just going to skip it today rather than doing a 25% session or a 50% session. And the more you can kind of bank those really easy baseline exercise sessions, you're going to get massively fitter. And that's, I guess, the secret that a lot of people don't understand, that if you can just walk, you're getting a cardiovascular workout. If you have a goal of completing the London Marathon or the London to Brighton or whatever big goal you have, walking around the block for 30 minutes is a huge benefit to your cardiovascular conditioning. And it raises the platform from which you launch the formal training sessions where you are going to go out on the weekend and try to extend your distance of your longest run or whatever. And same for the strength training scene, where if your routine is that you go to the gym 3 days a week and you bust it with a personal trainer for an hour or the Zoom personal training session, and then you don't lift up anything the rest of the week except a laptop, that's not going to predict success as well as someone who has a little bit of, I call them micro workouts that are sprinkled into the mix, where every morning you do a set of 20 deep squats. So you're engaging your glutes and your quads, and you're building that muscle tone so that when you go in the gym and do some deadlifts, you're going to feel a little bit better because you spent 4 minutes every morning engaging those same muscles. And you can kind of add up. You mentioned my morning routine, which started out really, really simple and easy. And now it's a pretty badass workout, if I have to say. Like, I do it every single day. I'm committed to it. And so I very, very carefully upgraded the degree of difficulty and the time duration because I wanted to make sure I could handle it and I wouldn't be averse to it no matter what. And so for me, this has worked really well. But when you start with a 5-minute session and you can commit to something that's that simple, or in the case of micro workouts, I have some examples that I've written about and I have some videos up. I think you can look on YouTube, Brad Kearns micro workout suggestions or something. But for example, I have a pull-up bar in my closet. And so my rule is anytime I go into the closet to get more Post-it notes because I have a supply cupboard in there, or to get a garment, I have to do one set. It's not like a big deal. Even if I did a nice workout that morning, or I have a big workout coming tomorrow, one set's not going to bother me or anyone else. I don't have to write it in my training journal. But if that's my rule and I can do, let's say 365 days later, we're talking about this and I've done, 200 sets of pull-ups just from the closet door rule, or lifting a single set of hex bar deadlifts every time I throw the garbage away from the kitchen because it happens to be on the way to the garbage bin outside. I'm lifting hundreds of thousands of extra pounds in the course of a year that is going to help my training so much without bringing in any of those risk factors from overtraining, injury, soreness when you push it too hard in the gym. So it's getting out of that all or nothing mentality where a workout is this beautiful work of art where you've put up wonderful numbers. And I know the CrossFit people, have their times on the whiteboard and they want to beat the previous time. Otherwise, they might as well go home. And that kind of mentality can really be adjusted gracefully to think of yourself as just living a fit lifestyle, which happens to include those big trips to the gym for the formal session, but it also happens to include the fun stuff.
So with one of the big challenges, particularly when I was running with other people, and I see it actually in the gym if you go in as a group of people, is how do you do your own training whilst being in a community? Because often, especially in the triathlon community and things like that, you've got to keep up with someone who's zooming ahead. And I mean, in weight training, you can take the weights off, but often someone's, let's do another set. Let's do biceps now. Let's go for some sprints. And it's quite easy to get into that kind of competitive mode unknowingly, even if it's just a couple of extra sets. So how you get around that?
Well, it is really nice to have that extra source of motivation from the group energy. And those are wonderful experiences, especially when I was a triathlete. I was training mostly by myself. And then when it was time to join up with the gang, you could count on having a great workout and pushing yourself to new heights. But that happens, I respected those sessions very much so. And so that I knew on Tuesday morning, we weren't going to mess around when 6 guys were meeting us at the trail. And so that means that on Saturday and on Sunday and on Monday, when I was out there jogging by myself, you can bet I wasn't going to be pushing or challenging myself in any way. I was thinking of, that forthcoming special occasion. And anyone can, treat their training program in the same manner. So if you do have a session with your trainer every Wednesday, that on Monday, Tuesday, you're just going to do those warm-up drills that the trainer gave you, and you're going to, keep the blood flowing, but you're not going to crush yourself and then show up into a gym where you are going to be challenged. So that's one thing that comes to mind right away. And then the other one is like, you got to have a big picture and understand the purpose for every single workout that you're conducting. And that will be really helpful versus just kind of a haphazard approach where you're responding to the person that passes you on the bike path because you don't like to get passed by someone wearing sneakers and you have clip-in cycling shoes. So you're going to catch them and chase them down. And believe me, there's some fast guys wearing sneakers on the bike path. You don't want any part of that when you're on a recovery day.
Brad, can I maybe a good time now to kind of touch on the actual kind of the maffetone, the heart rate training and that sort of thing. I was going to ask, when you were doing your sort of triathlon work in maybe like the 80s and the 90s, were you monitoring heart rate at all back then?
Yeah, I got my first heart rate monitor in 1987, made by Polar. It was the first wireless heart rate monitor available, and the wristwatch was a perfect square. And so we joked that it was like a miniature toaster on your arm, and it was quite large. It was bigger than my wrist, so it kind of stuck out. But that was really cutting edge, and luckily I met some guys that were, at that cutting edge and introduced me to heart rate training. Johnny G, the founder of spinning and a fitness legend in America, he got into that when no one else knew what was going on, and so monitoring the heart rate was a huge deal because we now know from great science, and Maffetone's been talking about this for decades, Dr. Phil Maffetone in his books, and people didn't listen for quite a while. And now he's getting more and more prominent, I think, and the message is being really well embraced across all fitness levels, all ability levels, from elites down to beginners. But the concept is that when you're doing a cardiovascular workout, there's a cutoff point where you're doing a mostly fat burning workout that's energizing and doesn't have a lot of stress, and then you cross over as you go faster and faster into a predominantly glucose burning workout that is more stressful, more traumatic for the muscles, takes longer recovery time. And if you kind of trend toward a workout that's slightly too stressful and you do that over and over, you're going to end up in the wonderful destination of burnout. And this is kind of the story for most people exercising in the group exercise world in the gyms. Most people out there on the roads training across the world for the 5Ks, 10Ks, marathons, ultra marathons, they're just taking that heart rate a little bit too high because you're still feeling very comfortable. You're not in a race setting where you're breathing hard and you're up at the anaerobic threshold heart rates. A lot of listeners, I'm sure, are familiar with that's the red line where you're right at the edge of what you can sustain for an hour if you were doing an all-out race. But the aerobic maximum heart rate is quite comfortable. And you can't really discern this very well subjectively. That's why the heart rate and the beeper alarm is so important, because you just get this imperceptible increase in intensity, degree of difficulty, and you shift out of that major fat burning mode and you start burning more and more and more sugar. And that's a completely different metabolic effect of the workout. So for most people who are trying to build endurance, be cardiovascularly healthy, and have this be a centerpiece of their fitness program, best results come when you slow the heck down and keep that heart rate at 180 minus your age in beats per minute or anywhere below that. That's the aerobic zone, the fat burning zone. So anyone, how old you are, you're 180 minus 50, your aerobic maximum heart rate is 130 beats per minute. And most people, if they were to go out there and actually do this with an accurate heart rate monitor, would be shocked at just how easy that pace is. And there's a lot of accomplished, competent endurance athletes that can go and perform admirably at the half marathon running race or do a 4-hour bike ride and climb in the hills with the fastest people in their neighborhood. But setting that beeper alarm can be a real eye opener, because it's the status of your fat burning ability, how you can perform at that low heart rate. And so the wonderful thing about this Maffetone advocated training, we call it in Primal Endurance, the aerobic-based training, is that if you discipline yourself to keep that heart rate low and you allow your body to build without the interruption of breakdown, burnout, illness, and injury that comes from an overly stressful training program, what happens is you get stronger and stronger over time without those interruptions. So you just get a little better every week or what have you. And you'll find yourself at the same heart rate moving much more quickly. And so you can actually do a test. So the runners would go to the running track. You want to have the same venue every time and run 8 laps at 130 heart rate in our example, the 50-year-old. And then you time yourself. So if those 2 miles take you 17 minutes and 41 seconds, because you're watching that alarm, you're not speeding up, you're just honoring the watch and trying to peg it right at 130 as best you can. It's going to go 132, 129, 131, 128, 132. You just try to hold a steady pace, hold a steady heart rate. It means you're going to slow down toward the end, by the way. The last couple laps are going to be slower than the first couple just because of attrition, right? And then you're going to record your time and you go out there a month later And then you're going to go for a 16:59 and then a 16:27 and then a 15:48. And everything feels super, super comfortable, but you're getting faster. And it's a phenomenal way to improve. And this strategy has been proven by the leading endurance athlete in every endurance sport for the last 60 years, dating back to Arthur Lydiard in New Zealand and training the great runners that came to the Olympics and won gold medals, Peter Snell, and all on down the line. And, this has been exported across the world to Michael Phelps, the swimming, doing these workouts that lasted 5 hours every day for a race that takes 1 minute and 52 seconds. But the phenomenal aerobic base allows an athlete to then, when it's time to speed up and put the gas pedal on and do a proper race pace effort, there's so much strength and power and aerobic capacity that they can easily speed up and then move at world record pace for, running the 10K on the track or whatever the example is.
I mean, I think it's just, it blew my mind when I came across that principles. I remember reading Phil Maffetone's book about 10, 11 years ago, big book of endurance and racing. I did the math test back when I was like 30, something like that. And I scored an appalling 13-minute miles at the age of 30. I mean, I was so aerobically unfit. It was unbelievable. I had to walk down hills sometimes. I was so poor. Actually, I decided to rock out my old heart rate monitor because I've been doing a bit of running over the last 4 months, just going at it at a more intuitive pace. And generally it's just kind of recovery runs at a moderate pace, inverted commas. But I struggled to keep up with my aerobic zone, actually. I was quite pleased. I felt a bit smug at the end of it. I was found that my muscles were starting to tire before my heart, I felt quite good about that, seeing as it used to be the other way around, because people think that if you're running at your aerobic pace, it has to be slow, and it's like an iceberg where you've got this huge base of aerobic speed underneath the water. And then when you need that anaerobic kick, it's the top of the iceberg. But it's a fascinating concept. And I think, listening to a lot of your Primal Endurance podcasts, and generally whenever you're talking, you are constantly reminding people that they have to stay within that zone in order to really see the results they want. Because harder doesn't necessarily mean you're going to go faster.
Yeah, well said. And then not just so we have a clear understanding, everyone listening, once in a while, if you want to go out there and bust one, this can have a fantastic adaptation effect. So if it is that Saturday where you're going to go and do the 4-hour bike ride and try to ride through the steep hills with the fastest riders in your town, and your heart rate's going to be all over the place, perhaps, let's say, you finish. That's a huge workout, requires a lot of recovery time afterward, where you might just be pedaling slowly on a stationary bike for several days after a peak performance session. Same with a race. You're going to do a big race, and then you're going to recover and allow your body to rebuild. And that's how we get fitter. But we know what happens when someone tries to race too much or tries to push too hard. And who really has known this for even longer are the bodybuilding world, and how to grow huge muscles to get on stage and look good. They are tremendous experts at stress and rest balance. They're not in the gym lifting bicep curls with an exhausted, sore bicep after they did their major sets the previous day. They're moving on to other body parts. They're eating a bunch of food. They're having down days and tapering and doing all these things. But the endurance community in general, with that type A approach, they don't want to take a day off because they feel like they're going to lose some fitness in one of the sports, and all these notions that, we have to be consistent. And it's great to be consistent in a certain context, but I think we mess up the context a lot when we talk about training, thinking that some big objective has to be met that's usually formulated in our mind, rather than figuring out what's best for our body. And Peter's talking about his client coming in and feeling like crap that day. Okay, today you're going to have a restorative, mobility, regenerative training session. And guess what? We might do that the next 6 days in a row if you're not reporting, proper energy at rest and supple, loose muscles. I mean, muscle soreness is the great sign that your muscles don't want to do whatever you've been doing to them, and you got to back off and just wait it out and be patient. I think Graham O'Brien, you remember him, the hour record holder from Scotland? he had a great training strategy where, he'd get on his bike and he'd pedal as fast as he can, trying to prepare for the hour record. And then if he wasn't ready to do it, the next training session, he would just take it easy until he was ready to go hard again. We can all, I think, figure out right when we start a workout what we have in the tank on that day. And then the rest of the time we're making excuses, fooling ourselves, pushing ourselves too hard, or perhaps wimping out, like you mentioned a little bit, where we really might feel better if we just got ourselves onto the mat and started doing some easy foam rolling mobility drills or what have you.
That's where, I mean, we've spoke about this before, and it goes across to everything. I think it translates to most things in life. But that training putting the heart rate monitor on goes on. I think we were saying it when we were recording, weren't we, about instinct, and you were saying, like, animals chasing a rabbit or something like that, and they have to do it. And that, but we've got the deeper thought to be able to not do that. But the heart rate, if you don't use a heart rate monitor, because I've used just breathing before, and if I can't breathe through my nose, I'll slow down or whatever it is that I'm doing. But the good thing with the heart rate monitor, I think, is because you can even be feeling like you're having a great day. You're feeling fantastic, but you go out for that run and you reach that threshold very quickly for whatever reason. And then other days you might not be feeling as good and think, oh, I don't want to do it today. But actually your body's telling you that you're okay, or your heart rate monitor is telling you you're okay. So it's one of those things, like, because people, like you said, it's difficult to be in that intuitive about it unless you've done it for a living, like you have. But it's difficult to be that intuitive about it if you're just somebody who works in a shop and just recreational activity. So it is a good thing to have as a measure of exactly what your body's trying to tell you, I think.
Yeah, it's essential. There's no way to do it with sensing very well. Even a long time experienced athlete like myself, I've been using heart rate monitor for, what did I say? That's 33 years ago. But I'm still fool myself anytime. And it might be the caffeine in your bloodstream that morning that's elevating your heart rate higher than you normally see it. But guess what? That means your body's under that stress from the stimulant, and you adjust your workout accordingly. So it's a really nice way to bring all your stress factors to the table and then dictate your workout accordingly.
Yeah.
So there's obviously effects that go with chronic overtraining or not listening to your body and thinking that if I just push through and forgetting about all the load of responsibilities from work, family, the stresses and strains of the world. And before we started recording, you mentioned you have a current interest in testosterone. I'd love to hear a little bit about that and how that applies to something that our listeners would be interested in as well.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, testosterone is known as the ultimate masculine hormone. A lot of times we associate it with aggression and macho power and the mindset of someone who's a little bit overly hyped. But the research on testosterone really quantifies it as the social status hormone. So it's used for peak performance in whatever venue we're pursuing. And that includes intellectual, like the chess masters were shown in one study to have a higher testosterone level than the opponents that they beat. And so it allows you to focus and want to elevate your social status, which is the male's primary biological drive. We want to solve problems, conquer our surrounding environment, and elevate our status within the group. And so if you think of this broader definition of testosterone, it's really important to keep you motivated and focused. And some of the stuff I talked about at the start, like having an athletic goal, is a really healthy thing for a male who's built to want to be a conqueror and an explorer and all the great things that made us humans today. So there's so much talk about this. Obviously, it's a hot supplement category, and there's hacks and tricks, and the hormone therapy is extremely popular these days. The rate of hormone replacement therapy is skyrocketing because the average male testosterone level across the world is going down at a really alarming rate. Research from both Europe and from America show that the average male testosterone level is declining at a rate of 1% per year since the 1980s. And I'm talking about whatever age you are, not the average decline that we experience ourselves personally over our lifetime, but that the male, the 40-year-old male in 1986 had a testosterone that was however many years that go 40% higher than the average male now. So this is a disaster, and a lot of people point to the main reason is because we have higher body mass index today than we did back in the 80s. So the average male around the world is carrying a spare tire. And particularly when we talk about the difference between just having a lot of body fat and especially having that belly fat, that visceral fat around the midsection, that can be especially destructive to your hormone health. And so that's really a big thing to think about, is that we have to fight this belly fat battle valiantly as our highest priority for the rest of our lives, and whatever age group we're heading into. If you maybe you're having belly fat at age 21 when you're in the fraternity drinking too many beers, that's fine. But usually this belly fat starts to show up when we hit our big 4-0 or the big 5-0, and we start to experience this decline. But this status of poor metabolic health, as evidenced by the belly fat, is what's going to trash your testosterone and cause this accelerated decline.
Is there when testosterone decreases, do other hormones increase? Do they find that all hormones decrease, or is there a kind of interplay?
Yeah, you might have heard this concept of insulin resistance, which is probably the single most prominent health problem in the modern world, right? It's just the long-term type 2 diabetes, obesity, driven by insulin resistance. That's producing too much insulin over a lifetime, and then you're all kinds of bad things happening in the body. And this kind of goes hand in hand with resistance to the effects of other hormones. Leptin is one of them. That's the key hormone that regulates satiety and fat storage versus fat burning. So you're all dysregulated with your appetite and fat storage hormones because you're producing too much insulin. And this can also lead to androgenic hormone resistance. So you're not really utilizing the whatever testosterone that you produce, and maybe you're not producing as much testosterone as you could be because of these largely metabolic health problems, thanks to your lousy diet, mostly. But with this MOFO mission that I'm promoting now, I have a series of 10 assignments. And so they address all aspects of stressful, high-tech modern life, and how you can right the ship and optimize these different lifestyle objectives to improve your hormone status. So one of them, of course, is cleaning up your diet, but we also have to talk about sleep. We also have to talk about your workout patterns, in particular, doing too much exercise, getting into those overly stressful chronic patterns that we talked about, where your heart rate goes a little bit too high at every single workout you do. So now your exercise program is just elevating the stress level in your life rather than being a stress reliever for all the stress that you have at your workplace. And that's kind of a fun way to I have a supplement product called MOFO. It stands for Male Optimization Formula with Organs. But here in America, MOFO is an acronym for something else that could indicate, maybe in UK also, since you guys are smiling. But if you want to be a MOFO for the rest of your life, we got to get all these things right. And the animal organ supplement is a great thing because it nourishes the body at the cellular level, and it gives the specific biodirectors coming from the animal organs, the reproductive organs of the animal. Testicle, prostate is what you're consuming in this freeze-dried form. Sounds kind of weird, but it's actually really a potent way to trigger natural increases in your own testosterone production. But as we know, we talked about a little bit off the recording, replacement therapy does the same thing. So you can go get an injection of testosterone, and typically what happens if you have these metabolic health problems and unhealthy lifestyle patterns is that testosterone is going to give you a very brief boost, and then it's going to eventually go to waste because your body is not metabolically capable of utilizing it. There's this concept called, or this process called aromatization, which is the conversion of testosterone into estrogen. Exactly what we don't want. And you will, if you have too much of this enzyme aromatase in your body, that's what you're going to do with the extra testosterone that you just paid for in injection form. So it necessitates a lifestyle approach, no matter who you are, even if you do turn to drug therapy because it's so popular now and you become convinced that you want to get that extra edge after you're trying really hard in your lifestyle. But for most people, there's so much room for improvement with the lifestyle factors that we got to get those dialed in first. And sleep would be probably the first thing. And then when we wake up in the morning, then we can talk about all the other diet, exercise, relationships, all that kind of fun stuff.
There's a hierarchy of recovery.
I mean, I was just going to say, Brad, there's so many, I've got a load of notes written down of sort of topics and areas to discuss with you. And there's no way we're going to get through them all today.
It's like an encyclopedia.
That's the first one done. What's the second one?
Yeah. So I was going to say, at some stage, if you're up for it, we'd love to have you back on to talk about some things in more detail. But I know, obviously, sleep you mentioned is a massive part of health for everyone, male and female, no matter what age you are. And I know you've talked a lot previously around, blue light and kind of circadian rhythms and stuff like that. I mean, can we maybe touch on that today and how important sleep is and setting ourselves up for better sleep? I know it's we could do a whole podcast on it, I know, but can you kind of maybe talk about some of your thinking and your big take homes about that?
Yeah, thanks, James. Well, the thing that I usually experience here when I'm talking to people about it is everyone nods their head. Everyone has the knowledge base and the information of how important sleep is. We know how we don't want to have bright lights going on deep into the night or being looking at our screens deep into the night. And I haven't encountered too many people that are like, really? We shouldn't have bright lights or be doing emails until 11:30 p.m. So we have this widespread acceptance. There's no controversy about sleep. Well, the anti-sleep crowd say that you should just take a nap in the afternoon and that's all you need. So rather than get into more dispensation of facts that people already know, I'd love to leave the listener with something a little off track here that's interesting. Of course, you need to dial in your evening sleep. The best way to do that is to minimize artificial light and digital stimulation after dark, build in rituals that are away from screen entertainment in the final hour, ideally 2 hours, right? Walking your dog around the block. If you own a dog, you're obligated to do it. And if you're not, you're a lousy dog owner. Don't be a lousy dog owner. Get the dog out and honor something bigger than yourself and your own selfish needs to watch Netflix instead. That's my plug for the dog. But I'm also interested in focusing on the incredible necessity for the first time in the history of human. We need downtime from hyperconnectivity and the mobile device that is stimulating our brain nonstop. And I know you guys reported your age groups, and I'm a little older than you guys, but I had the great privilege of living, let's see, probably half my life or somewhere thereabouts without those mobile devices and without even the internet for a lot of those times, if we go back and think about it. And so I know what it's like to be sitting around in the backyard chatting with my dad about golf after the round instead of glued to the screen and watching how Tiger Woods hit his shots, because we have that on tape and we can study it and get more information after our golf round. And so these periods of downtime where we were away from technology, that has widespread benefits to brain function, emotional health, mental health, the ability to restore and rejuvenate and refocus. And so I think that's an area where could be a really great wake-up call for people to start putting more discipline into place to power down when appropriate, such as when you're emphasizing direct social interaction, especially now because we're deficient in direct social interaction, right? So the least you could do if you are having your mask on and having lunch with someone is, stay present. And so I'm really working hard on that myself, because I think there's a lot of great benefits to technology. I'm not going to badmouth it out of hand, but there's some great work, a book called Deep Work by Cal Newport, talking about how to really focus and do your best work. He says, the more power these devices offer, the higher requirement we have to exercise extreme discipline for us to be the ones in charge and how to use them appropriately and for best results. A good example is, I like to grab my phone and look up how many shots are being dispensed on a daily basis in America for the vaccine. Oh, it's 1.2 million, whatever. I'm glad to know that. But when I pick this stupid thing up to look up the information I want, look at my screen. Look at all these missed text messages I have during the podcast. And I'm going to react because, that's an important one and that's an important one. So I've gone from being the guy in charge who proactively wanted to obtain a fact to improve my life to someone who's reacting to all this stimulus and throwing me off what I was supposed to do. So that's the part where, stay in control, exercise your power to power down and have downtime, and then doing things like spending time in nature and just letting your brain take in the natural surroundings. There's great research around that showing that it has an instant reduction in stress hormone levels and provides a sense of well-being and actually changes your body chemistry within seconds or minutes once you immerse yourself into a nature environment and put your phone away. So I'd like to throw that into the mix along with the objective to improve our evening sleep habits.
One of the very
Go on, James. Go on.
I'm just going to say one of the straightforward things that I know I've heard before, and I've heard you talk about it, is just something very simple that can have an immediate impact on our listeners and everyone, is just not having your phone in the bedroom where you sleep, charging it up in another room or keeping it plugged in downstairs or in the hall or something, because so many people just have the phone right by the bed. And if they're struggling to sleep or whatever, if they get, they roll over that, like you say, they pick the phone up and there's instant stimulation there and they get dragged down that rabbit hole of scrolling mindlessly and taking in all that light and all that information again.
Mine, I haven't got a plug socket next to my bed. So mine's, I have to charge it up in my cupboard, my wardrobe. Which means when the alarm goes off, I have to get out of bed to go and switch the alarm off as well. So it's a win-win.
Good
it's
man.
in the bedroom,
Win-win.
but I can't get up nowhere near it. And that works wonderful. And what you said there, Brad, you said it on your podcast as well. I think you said it in a slightly different way, was because I have no notifications switched on my phone, as in no beeps, no buzzers, no nothing. If people want to get in touch with me, they can ring me and leave an answer phone message, and I'll get back to them if I miss the call. But if you are waiting for a call or a message, this is what you said, you get your phone out more because it's not buzzing and beeping. So you're like, have they got in touch yet? Have they got? And it's just, so this is one of the things, because I was like, I'm dead clever, me. I switch all notifications off. That's it, done. But it'll still get you. And it's so the only way to not with it is to not have it with you.
That's it. There's a team of people who are paid very well, who are very intelligent, who are designing that software it's like a newborn baby. They've been designed by nature to grab your attention. And it's the same with your phone. It just grabs your attention. It's designed that the updates they do make it more and more intrinsic to your life. And what did they say in the 60s? That we would be liberated from a life of servitude. We'd be able to spend all our time in leisure because of technology. But really what it's done, and what I see with my clients, is that they are now at their desk at 8 a.m. They will still be checking text messages and emails at 10 p.m. because that's the way of the homework balance that we have with the kind of Zoom environment. So it's a tough thing to fight. But if you can start making small changes, then I think you can see a big return.
Yeah, well said, especially the part about small changes, because we have so much information at our fingertips and we can better ourselves as humans so quickly and easily and efficiently that I think we get overwhelmed. I'm raising my hand. I personally get overwhelmed. I'm listening to other podcasts about guys that are so badass on so many different levels. And I'm like, oh man, I'm not even fighting that battle very well right now. I'm too focused on these 9 other things. And so you can kind of feel like diminished if you're not just dialed in with every single thing that the next expert is listing. So the tiny little changes, and I reference my morning routine as my best success story. I'm here on 4 years plus now, doing it every single day without interruption, without fail. And it just started as a tiny little thing where I was getting stiff and sore after my sprint workouts that I do once a week. and I'd wake up the next morning and my calves, I couldn't, I'd have to tiptoe around, and it would take 2 or 3 days to clear that muscle soreness. And I realized, geez, I don't do anything close to sprinting except for on my badass workout that I feel great and perform very well. And I'm smart about it. It's not something stupid, but it's like once a week is not quite enough to condition the muscles and get my hamstrings in the proper flexibility and resiliency. So that's when I started doing, 5-10 minutes every morning of working those hamstrings and getting that core firing, so that I'd have a little bit better base to launch the sprint workouts from. And it just grows from there. But it's a little change. Is a lot of the experts say this too. John Assaraf, the author of Inner Size, a brain training expert, do something so small and so ridiculously easy that you're going to scoff at it. And you maybe even tell a client, can you lift a bloody kettlebell 10 times a day? That's it, just 10 times? But guess what? 10 times 365, that's a lot of weight, and that's a lot of goblet squats or whatever your entry point is to a different world of being the person in charge and person that has that discipline to exercise, even in a small way.
Fantastic. Paul, were you going to say something there? Sorry.
No. I thought you were going to say. I could see you itching to say. There's so many questions. That's the thing.
Right. That's number 2. James, what? No.
No. I think we haven't even touched yet, Brad. Obviously, and I don't think probably we won't get started on it now. Maybe we will try and see if we can tempt you back on again. But we haven't even touched yet on the kind of we've mentioned a few times the importance of nutrition and diet, but we haven't sort of even touched on, sort of ketogenic and kind of carnivore and the effect that sort of sugar and simple carbohydrates have on the body and that sort of stuff. But I know that's a massive area that you talk a lot about as well. So I don't think we should get into that at this juncture right now. But yeah, I mean, it's been absolutely fantastic speaking to you so far. And yeah, I mean, like I say, I've got a list of things I could talk to you all day about, but I won't push you too much, I don't think, at the moment.
One thing everyone's going to be really interested in is, like, how do you manage to get around a golf course that quickly? and still manage to hit the ball and get it in the right direction? How the hell do you do that?
Yeah, there's this sport called speed golf. And if you haven't heard of it, boy, you got to take a little time on YouTube. Of course, it doesn't take much time because we play the golf course very quickly. But instead of the traditional notion of golf being this slow, boring sport, speed golf is an actual golf tournament where you count your strokes and you shoot the course. But they also time you when you start. And so they add together your minutes and your strokes, and that's your speed golf total score. So, for example, my best score on the professional circuit, I shot a 78 in 47 minutes one day at the California Championships. I got third. And so my speed golf score was 125. And the winner was 119 and second place was 121. And so it's a very strategic event. It's kind of like the biathlon in the Winter Olympics where they're cross-country skiing, shooting at a target. If they miss the target, they ski a penalty lap. And so you got to be a fast skier. But when you get to the target, you can't miss either. Same with speed golf, where you want to hit that ball straight. You want to get the ball in the hole without wasting time in the sand trap, and you got to move quickly through the course. So you have to shoot a good score and be on the move at all times. So it makes it into an actual athletic event that's really a great challenge to kind of get in that Zen mode where you're just reacting to what's in front of you. You're not overly analytical like so many golfers suffer from. And I've been playing on that circuit for many years, but I'd like to mention that Guinness World Record you talked about, because it all started with a gentleman from the UK named Steve Jeffs. And I give him all the credit because I was fooling around on YouTube one day. And here's this beautiful Guinness World Record video from the actual Guinness website. And it says, fastest single hole of golf ever played. And I'd never heard of this thing before, because again, I'm talking about, we're playing 18-hole tournaments where we're kind of running at a tempo pace and trying to play the whole course. I've never seen anyone just do one hole, but this guy had an awesome video on the Guinness World Record site. His family dogpiled him on the green when he broke the official Guinness World Record. And so it was just a single hole. and they just time you. They don't care what strokes you take, but you got to get from the tee to the finish in the fastest time possible. And it has to be 500-yard minimum length hole. You can't do it on some little dinky hole, obviously. So you have the standard of a 500-yard hole. So I saw that video. I was captivated because I love sprinting as, my other main training focus. And I trained and trained and trained. And I had this miracle experience on the golf course where I actually got a birdie. I hit 4 perfect shots on a par 5. So I sunk the putt for birdie 4. I was only using 1 club, which helped me break the record because I didn't have to even take a bag or mess with any other clubs. I just hit a 3-wood every time. And it was a really fun, competitive pursuit for me that I like to talk about a lot because it was really special. It had a lot of components in place. I had to get 10 people to officially certify the record. So I had to rally my friends and family and even find some innocent bystanders that I hadn't met before so they could sign an affidavit that they didn't have a vested interest, but they witnessed me break the record. So it was this big deal with the Guinness standards. And my video is pretty funny if you look at it on bradkearns.com. Again, it's only 1 minute and 38 seconds that it takes to watch me play the hole. So it's not a big ask of your time to watch a golf video.
So a couple of questions there, Brad. So you birdied a par 5 using only a 3-wood, yeah? Is that what you said?
Yeah, I was sprinting full speed and carrying just a 3-wood. So I hit a 3-wood, I hit another 3-wood, I chipped up onto the green with a 3-wood, and I sunk the putt with a 3-wood. And that was through a very methodical approach and analysis of, this. Steve Jeffs had the record before me. It's since been broken by a professional on the European PGA Tour. I'm going to go back and get it this year in Spain. So I have something to shoot for. But that was, a lot of practice, many months of practice, chipping and putting with the 3-wood. And the most interesting thing is you're allowed multiple attempts at the record, but I'm out there running an all-out 400 meters like in a track meet, because if you want to break a record, you're not jogging or pacing yourself. You're sprinting to the ball. You can barely see the ball through the tears in your eyes and your heaving chest, and you just have to swing and hope you hit the ball straight through a lot of practice. But it was really an all or nothing shot, because I realized the first time I attempted the record that I hit better golf shots on the second try, but I was so much slower running that it was really the first try. You're either going to do it or you're not. So talking about that competitive intensity and that pressure, and then having all my friends and family show up onto the golf course, and everyone's looking at us like, what is this big group doing here with clipboards? And, so I felt this pressure that I hadn't felt for decades since I was retired from racing on the pro circuit when I was a young guy. And it was really cool to put myself on that stage going, it's now or never. I've trained for months for this single effort that's going to take 1 minute 38, and then we're going to be all done and go home and have dinner. And, to put yourself in that mix once in a while is super healthy and super exciting. And, the fact that I succeeded was great, but I remember just, teeing off and realizing, that I was so thankful for the opportunity to just attempt the record and to have my friends and family out there watching me, that even if I failed and whiffed on the ball and, couldn't find it and everything was a big dud, it's okay, because I probably was going to try it again some other time. So not that people need to become interested in speed golf, but I think that the story that I like to tell is that excitement level and that challenge and that, working through this little obscure problem to get in the Guinness Book of Records is it's something that's, it's interesting.
And then just one more question. When you've got your best finish and you shot, was it 78, you said, or 76, 78? So was that on a par 72 course?
Yeah, this is a championship course, a pretty tough course. And we like to go over 6,000 yards. So it's a legit, tournament effort. And what's interesting there is if you give me all day with a caddy and 14 clubs, because I'm only carrying 5 clubs. So I'm doing these in-between shots often where I have to just figure out a way to get it on the green, even though I don't have the right club. But if you give me all day and all the clubs, I'm not much better than 78. 78's a good round for me. I'd be happy with that. And that's what the magic of the sport is that you get out of that overly analytical mindset and you just allow your natural athletic ability to take over, where you run up to the green, you get your first look at a putt, and rather rather than studying it for 5 minutes and looking at the different angles, your brain knows how to hit that ball and how hard to hit it and has the confidence to do it unless you get in your own way and start telling stories. And I know the golfers listening are nodding their heads right now because you can get so far into your head that you lose confidence in your ability to just naturally swing and whack the ball onto the green. And in speed golf, you don't have time to lose confidence, or you don't have time to get angry at a bad shot, because when you hit that ball in the trees, you're sprinting into the trees to go find it and whack it out and keep going.
Like hunting or something. You can't wait for the prey to sit there and just, you just got to get there, focus or something.
That sounds to me like a great way to make golf less frustrating, because I've not really played courses and stuff, but I used to hit a ball around when I was younger. I only had a 5-iron, and I used to end up most of the time just throwing the after the ball, because it was just because I just throw it down the field. So that sounds like a great way to make it less frustrating. I might even take that up.
But that's incredible, Brad, to think that you went round a championship golf course in 6 over par, and you did it in around like 47 minutes. And it would normally take, 3.5 hours, 4 hours to get around if you're playing, at a normal pace in a 4-ball or something. So, I mean, that's incredible. Yeah.
At least you get a workout. Even if you don't play well, it's always a good day at speed golf for sure.
Oh, dear.
That's amazing. I mean, that's what I love about listening to your podcast. I'm always like, that sounds crazy, but it sounds brilliant.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
Well,
so we won't keep you any longer, Brad, because I know you're busy and you've made the time to talk to us. But it absolutely
we'll come back and we could talk about diet next time. It'll be fun. I'd love to be back. I appreciate what you guys are doing.
Yeah, and it's so good for our community to hear what you say, because I think you say it very clearly, and I think there is a lot of things that people can take action on, because one of the big challenges that most people face, and we've discussed it already in this podcast, is that there is so much information out there, and it's very difficult to know which way to turn. Yeah. But I think the message is, if you start very small and just incrementally add volume or add intensity or whatever it is, just like you did with your morning routine, before you know it, you create something pretty tough. There's something you can repeat. That's so cool.
Yep. Love it.
And also with the testosterone, there's an interesting kind of linear parallel, which is grip strength, which men of our generation have a lower grip strength than the previous generation.
Yeah. Crazy, those stats. Very disturbing. Yeah, the average grip strength has gone down. Your grandpa was stronger than you. That's pretty funny to consider.
Yeah. So we've got waistlines expanding, we've got grip strength decreasing, we've got testosterone decreasing, and there's kind of 3 major strands there. If you can get on top of it, get stronger, work on your diet, optimize your hormone balance through lifestyle, you've got optimal health. Well, on the way to it.
Yep. Thanks, Health Oddity guys.
Yeah, thank you very much. So, James, do you have anything else to say?
No, just to thank Brad for a really interesting hour, and it would be great to have you back on to talk about diet another time, and we'll definitely sort that out. But thanks so much for spending your time with us today, Brad. It's been a pleasure.
And Brad, before I go to Peter, how do people find you? What's the best route to kind of find out more information about what you can do?
Oh, you can look at bradkearns.com and find this videos I'm talking about, and subscribe to the B.Rad Podcast. I love to hear from listeners from across the world. It's so cool to get an email from the UK or from Sweden and think, gee, I'm sitting here in my closet recording these shows, and people across the world are listening. That's what's so fun about, and connecting with you guys the same. I'm so honored to be on your show and talk across the pond and get the information out there. So yeah, go find me at bradkearns.com. Say hi, send a note.
Fantastic. And Peter?
I haven't got anything to add, but I just wanted to ask Brad if he remembers Jerry Springer. I forgot about this, because Paul's little round up there is it's like Paul's final thought. Because when I was listening, I've re-listened to the last week's one just to chop it up and stuff with Dan John, and you did that at the end, and I'd forgotten that you'd done that. Listening, and I was like, it's Paul's final thought. So I need to remind everyone to keep an ear out.
Yes.
Go Jerry. Go Jerry.
Go Jerry. That's it. But like I say, we have a better quality guest on our show.
Well,
right on.
Yes, this is true.
Brilliant.
So thank you very much, Brad. Pleasure having you. And you guys listening, please subscribe to the podcast. You can listen on YouTube. You can listen to all the major providers. And you can also like us on Facebook or Instagram. But next week, we've got more guests. So stay listening. And we've got the Dan John one from last week, which was fantastic. So keep listening. Thanks a lot.
You've been listening to Health Odyssey with Peter Lant, Paul Bassett, and James St. Pierre. To get your regular fix of hype-free health, you can subscribe and leave a review wherever you get your favorite podcasts. You can find out more on today's and other topics at healthodyssey.com or find us on Facebook or Instagram by searching for Health Odyssey.